last time you looked above? Search the night sky for shooting stars. Shooting stars. Shooting stars. Hey, come with me. We'll discover life happening around us without our screens. Hey, look in my eyes. You and I are here in our living flesh. We are alive. When is the last time you felt awake? You felt hope. You felt engaged. Take my hand. You and I will talk without any distractions and understand. Hey, I am here. You and I are human with everything in common. Do you care? Do you care? Do we care? Will you care? Will we care? Are you here? Are we?
Well, I'm busted flat, and it's only Monday. I got 4 more days till I'm paid again. Well, the weekend comes, but I'm dreading Sunday. I grab a cooler of beer and a couple of my friends. And this red dirt road, it goes on forever. Some would say the party never ends, but I feel my time is growing closer. And that might be where it all begins. Yeah, I'm gonna live each day like it's a Saturday. Ooh, I wanna move along right down the line. If you ain't got friends, you ain't got nothing. Ooh, you better pick a side before you're out of time. Ooh, let me tell you something, you're running out of time. Well, there's nothing wrong with working hard, but you know in turn, you gotta play hard too. And it's a fact of life that stands eternal. It's in your mirror, staring back at you. Yeah, I'm gonna live each day like it's a Saturday. Ooh, I wanna move along right down the line. If you ain't got friends, you ain't got nothing. You better pick a side before you're out of time. Oh, let me tell you, son, you're running out of time.
You're listening to Ripon Common Sense Radio.
That's right, where we take you well into the midnight hour with our special Art Bell Archives show happening tonight and every night this weekend, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Tune in as we open up the Art Bell Archives and dive into the lost classics of a vocal treasure. We take a look at those stories and we bring them up to date and we share them with you. We ask for your input and your shout-outs, your call-ins, as we go through the most amazing stories ever told. Tune in tonight and every night as we reinvestigate the Art Bell Archives live.
The Art Bell Archive Show. 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, RiponCommonSense.com.
Ripon Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Ripon Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only. Enjoy. The captain has turned on the seatbelt sign.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Art Bell Archives live show. I'm your host, AJ, the Ripon Rabbit. Give yourselves a round of applause for being smart enough to be here. Tonight we dive down the rabbit hole into the ancient engineers that created major megalithic structures here on planet Earth. It's a bizarre connection to last night's tale of Hidden in Rock Lake, part 2 if you will, as we continue the series looking in depth at perhaps lost civilizations that left evidence that they were here that's been hidden in plain sight this entire time. So buckle up your seatbelts, folks, because tonight we're dealing with the ancient engineers. That's tonight, Saturday, January 25th, 2020. I really enjoy when we get together on a Saturday night because I look forward to preparing these schedules for you, much like Art Bell did in the Coast to Coast AM radio. And of course, would cover this style of broadcast tonight on a frequent basis. Numerous guests came and spoke about Stonehenge and pyramids and the detailed structures that are found. But tonight we're going to explore some bizarre tales, some incredible structures, and we're going to focus on the information, dust it off, and bring it up to date for where we are in this exciting time. So the information we're going to learn tonight is beneficial to all of these rabbit hole connections that tie all of these broadcasts together. And again, as you begin to listen to these broadcasts on a regular basis and you participate in the rabbit hole community, you will see that all of this is connected in some very, very remarkable ways. Now, tonight, let's take a look at how we're connecting those dots and why it's important to connect these dots. Listen.
Why does it matter that we connect the dots from the past? Because if we don't know who we are and where we come from, how could we possibly know where we are going? That's actually a quote from Jurassic Park, believe it or not. So what I'd like to ask you tonight is to keep an open mind at all times, because the information, the further I go down this rabbit hole, the more disturbing it becomes. And I'm sure many of you are aware of this already. And there is no bottom to the rabbit hole. It just gets weirder and weirder and weirder. And some of the information I'm going to share with you tonight is getting to that point where I don't know if I can actually talk about some things in public at this stage.
Wow, wasn't that exactly what we said last night? Welcome, Clemson all, Alum 98, Moneybag 73, Bleed the Same, Fayette, Dark Wolf's Den, 42 James. Who else is up there? Oh, I'm in there too. But I think that covers most of you. If I missed anybody, I apologize. So, again, I love the quote from Michael Tellinger, who is speaking in this, Jurassic Park quote. And what we know about the past is important to what we're about to explore in our future. And these rabbit holes are not easy to speak about. On Thursday night when we did the 5G, I actually received a nasty email, which I'm going to be reading in the next 5G update because I'm going to continue that conversation. It started here and I'm not going to let it go because I care about these conversations. I really do. And I thank all of you for caring enough to be here. So top hats off to you guys in chat for paying attention.
Some things I have to edit myself because if I talk about some things in public, which I've tried, I come under incredible attacks. And I don't want to alienate any people. My whole purpose is to unite people, not to divide people anymore. We bloody divided enough. So let's share information that actually is going to act as a platform to unify people and give us a direction forward instead of create more division. So some level of editing is necessary from time to time to keep that unifying factor going. So let's kick this off.
I completely appreciate with that statement because I have received remarkable emails from many people who listen to the show on a variety of the topics that we cover. And I, am spooked from time to time because I'm new to some of these subjects. I was an avid Art Bell fan. I listened to Art. I know the subjects that he carried and conversed about and debated. But when we bring things like the Mandela effect into the conversations, it blows my mind. And just today, I found myself, quote unquote, witnessing to somebody who had never heard about the Mandela effect before. So these conversations have to take place. And as we learned last night about the secrets hiding below Rock Lake in a little tiny town in central Wisconsin, we're talking about amazing structures. And that's what Michael is speaking about.
The world is covered in countless, unimaginable numbers of ancient, megalithic, ancient sites built by civilizations and people that we know nothing about. Every year, every month, every week, new sites are being discovered. And I know that Hugh Newman, for example, is one of those people that keeps discovering new, incredible sites. Some of the things he shared with me over the last few days just blew my mind. So we have no idea of what happened on this planet. We just literally are like babies waking up from a deep sleep.
Now, we have no idea what's happening on this planet now, Fayette. Exactly. Full hazmat suit to install 5G? Nah, it's safe. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. I love that comment, and that is so true. We have no idea the things that are taking place in our world. And you're absolutely right, Moneybags. Ancient engineers had elongated skulls, perhaps. We will be sharing additional information on that in the second part of the program. Again, we are in these strange times of discovery where the internet and things like social platforms allow us to share this information with each other, which is a fantastic time to be in.
Trying to figure out who we are, where we come from, and why we're here, while there's this unwritten, unknown history of our planet that probably goes back a lot further and is a lot more weird and strange and unimaginable that most of us could possibly fathom. And it's these strange structures like this that were built by some people in ancient times. And when they were finished building this one, they decided to go from South America to just up the road here and build one of these. They said, let's drag a bunch of rocks from Wales and put them up in a circle.
Now, I have included the photos that go along with this presentation tonight in the video notes listed below as tonight's show notes. If you right-click and open that in a new window so that you can continue to hear the broadcast, as he's going through certain things he speaks about tonight, the images are all posted there. And, of course, this being radio, it's our only solution. So I apologize for those of you paying attention on YouTube. Very simple. Just right-click and open it in a new window. For those of you listening on air, go to rippandrabbithole.com and click Listen Live. Under there, there's a place for tonight's show notes. And you're going to see these incredible photos. Now, try not to look ahead, okay? There's a lot of information there. And let's not get ahead of ourselves because this stuff gets really fantastic. So really try not to get ahead.
And somebody said, well, why should we do that? Because it's cool. And they did that. So they dragged a bunch of rocks, put them in a circle, and it looked cool, and they moved on. And they went into the desert, and they built a big statue because they didn't have any statues. And the reason I realized just recently why they could do all this stuff in ancient times, very simple reason, because they did not have jobs. They didn't have jobs to go to every day. They had all this time on their hands.
Now, if you joined us last night as we discussed what was hidden beneath Rock Lake, this subject came up with our chatters and the listeners at YouTube, where were they slaves? Okay. Were these structures created under a slave master scenario? Or were these people willingly dedicating their heritage and their lives' work to building these megalithic structures? Put a 1 in the chat room if you think that they did this willingly. Okay, and put a 0 in the chat room if you think absolutely not, this was slave labor. These people were, cracked under the whip, so to speak, for generations. Okay, these things took thousands of years in some cases to build. But I'm really, really curious. Grenoff, welcome. I'm so glad you made it. Grenoff is actually responsible for this tonight's topic because over at the Rip and Rabbit Hole, we have an area for show topic suggestions. And Grenoff has been doing a remarkable job documenting and noting topics that we have on the radar, which allow us to then dive down into the archives and dust off the information and then, of course, share it with you. So big round of applause in the chat room for Grenoff for suggesting tonight's topic because it's fantastic. And that happened earlier on Thursday. Thanks to my listeners, I learned about 5G. And I'm totally on board with Stop 5G. So we'll save that for that conversation. But again, I want to thank you and I'm glad that you're here listening tonight. To catch you up, we are now at the same point we were last night with a few of you answering 1. You think that they did this willingly. Bleed the same with a 0 saying, no, they were under slave labor. Moneybags 1 for slave labor. Fayette is undecided. Depends on the civilization, which I can agree with that statement. I'm 50-50 with you on that. So, again, we may never know. But, again, like we said at the beginning of the program, the reason why we want to connect these dots is so that if we understand, like they said in Jurassic Park at the beginning of the program, if we understand where we've been, then we know where we're going.
To do stuff with, say, what shall we do today? Hey, let's go and build some of these pyramidal kind of things right next to this big statue in the desert. So they went and they built big pyramidal stuff, and they went out somewhere out near Israel and then built these big platforms with giant rocks, and they went up the mountain in South America, and they built more rocks that fitted into each other, and they thought, wow, it'll freak out people in the future, and they went and built, carved big statues and put them under a roof of solid stone and rock, and because they needed statues, and they needed some place to go and worship and offer food to these statues, and then they went up the mountain and they built faces, wall faces with faces sticking out them. And why did they do that? Because it's going to freak people out. And they did that because they had all this time. And then they had a board meeting under a tree like people in ancient times did, like they still do in Africa, because they didn't have jobs. They had just this time, and they had a board meeting under a tree. And one of the guys said, look, what we've never done yet is dig a hole and surround the hole with giant stones. So they said, well, let's do that. So they did that. Why should we do it? Because we can. So they did that. And then one said, wow, that's amazing, huh? I said, what did I just hear you say? Did you say, huh? I said, wow, I think that is a really cool letter for an alphabet. We don't have an alphabet yet, but I think let's start with her as a first letter of the alphabet. So they went up the mountain and they carved a whole lot of hers, and they left them behind to confuse us.
Now,
And
I love the confusion that takes place there. And if you look at tonight's show notes and you see the picture of the H's, these are remarkable stone structures that bear a very strange resemblance to a capital H. So the jest and the joke that's being made there is very real, okay? And when we think about the age of these particular structures, and we think about this, he's going to touch on the real finite point here.
And then one of them said, you know what we've never done? We've never carved a whole city out of solid rock. So they went up the mountain and carved a whole city out of solid rock. Then they said, we need more pillars on top of a platform. So they built more pillars on a platform. Somebody said, we need more stairs with pillars. So they built more stairs with pillars. And then what is clearly evidential is that these people could hold their breath for a long, long time, because then they went under the water, under the oceans, and they did this only because they could hold their breath. Otherwise, they could never do this. Then they went into the jungles and they built these kind of things.
Now, when he speaks about hold your breath and build these kind of megalithic structures under the ocean, and you relate back to what we talked about in Hidden Beneath Rock Lake last night, we explored the possibility that maybe these structures were built, okay, and then flooded and turned into a lake to cover them or hide them. But perhaps these were built while the lake was even 10 times bigger in prehistoric scenario in Wisconsin at that time. So perhaps these were built underwater. So how was that done? How did they go to the depths, if that's the case? What was the ancient scuba technique in, ancient times? Does anybody know? I agree with you guys. Tellinger is hilarious, too, the way he points this out. Like, yeah, so we just went here, we did this, we did that, but he gets to that important point.
They're really scary, and they built more statues and chopped their heads off because that was freaky. And then another guy said, what we've never done is taken a big rock and hollow the rock out. So they went and they hollowed a bunch of rocks out, and they scattered them throughout Siberia, and then they went back into the desert and they carved out big blocks and put them on top of each other like Lego blocks, and they covered it with sand because they would be fun, just cover it with sand. And then they built this big thing that when you look at it from the top, it vibrates. It looks like it's moving and vibrating. And then they put these bell-like things on top of it to do something, and we don't quite know what it was. And the amazing thing is that they did all this stuff with hammers, chisels, ropes, and pulleys.
Now, there you go. Hammers, ropes, chisels, and pulleys. They did all of these things without CAD, without a Macintosh, depending on what Apple, a Macintosh. I mean, come on. This is... They did this without scuba gear in the case in Rock Lake. They carried thousands of shells from the Gulf of Mexico to the middle of Wisconsin just to adorn the princess with seashells from the Gulf of Mexico. What's going on here, folks? Really?
And this is what our historians are still trying to convince us of today. That is the most remarkable and unbelievable thing. Even the next most unbelievable thing is that pretty much everything I shared with you here so far, all of these structures are either in the northern hemisphere or along the equator. Very little has ever happened in the southern hemisphere. And that's a big problem. Until you discover the vanished civilizations of southern Africa. Because if southern Africa is supposed to be this cradle of humankind that we keep being told about, there must be stuff that happened there in ancient times. And that's exactly what it is. The vanished civilizations of southern Africa is a big, big deal. I've only recently started to realize what a big deal it is, because until I started talking about this and showing this on the large scale in the numbers that we find these ancient ruins in southern Africa, there was very little knowledge or information written or available about that. So
what I think is really fascinating there is the point he makes about the line. Okay, and if you listened last night to the show, Hidden Under Rock Lake, we talked about the Michigan copper mines and the line, the straight line, straight through Aztlan, right smack dab through Cahokia outside of St. Louis and into the Gulf of Mexico, straight across in a very straight line, dead smack into the middle of the Aztec Empire. So this, in ancient engineering, was a thought process, perhaps celestial, and they were able to mark and monitor things like Orion and his belt. And by the way, if you were joined last night in the backstage discussion at Rip'n Rabbit Hole after the show, we talked about this supernova Betelgeuse, right? And I know a few of you went out to look for it. And I went myself tonight. And I did notice a very extremely bright star off into the western part of the sky tonight. Now, it was a little cloudy, so the glow was adding from its brightness to the marvelous appearance of this star. But guys, I got to say, this spooked me out for a moment. I thought, oh my gosh, here comes the supernova. It's coming our way. So, again, when I really think about this straight line that we discussed, and he points out the very same thing, these ancient civilizations, like the lost civilizations of Africa or South Africa, as he points out, all of this stuff is above that, hemisphere, which is the same case in Wisconsin and the straight line through it. So, again, remarkable.
to the stone circles and the vanished civilizations of southern Africa that left behind more than 10 million circular stone ruins that are absolutely spectacular only when you start looking at them from the air. Each one is completely unique, and some of them are very large, some of them are small, some of them look insignificant, some of them look like beautiful flowers, and you'll notice that they're all connected to each other by these channels. They do not stand alone. You'll notice that they have extended structures that are covered by soil that move away from the stone circles as we see them sticking out of the ground today.
Now, again, if you're just joining us on tonight's topics in the show notes listed below the video, if you right-click on that, you can see imagery that associates with the broadcast this evening.
And it just goes on and on. What you're looking at is the largest cluster of stone ruins found anywhere in the world today. It makes everything else pale into insignificance. Sometimes they run for 100 by 100 kilometers, connected, all stone circles that are not standalone. They're all connected by channels and this weird spider's web effect that holds all of these circles and the channels together.
Thank you so much, Bizwoofer. I see that you've joined us. A few new people have joined along, but Bizwoofer, thank you for joining. Thank you for the fascinating show tonight, because it really is. And, of course, Michael Tellinger, a fascinating subject to listen to.
And you just see the devastation and the destruction from some event that destroyed all of this a long, long time ago. And then a few of them have been rebuilt and restructured in more recent times. The key thing here is that there are no doors and entrances. So these cannot be dwellings for people or cows or other animals, because clearly they were not built with doors and entrances. They're something else.
Clearly they were not built with doors and entrances. Now, again, the rabbit holes connect. And if you were here last night with Rock Lake, you know we spoke about exactly what he's going to say now.
Drawings from 1939 clearly indicate that they have no doors and entrances, that they're circular structures all connected to each other by these channels looking like a bunch of grapes here in this image. And sometimes these circles are concentric, connected to each other, all linking to each other. And that is all seated in a large network of agricultural terraces that cover at least 450,000 square kilometers in South Africa and Zimbabwe. Who built these terraces? What were they for? What were they growing? And who were they feeding?
Who were they feeding? And as we raised and postulated last night, perhaps 11,500 to 16,000 years ago, there were Aboriginal Costco's. And we suspect Rush Lake in the area of Ripon, which, by the way, is a part of that ley line for the Aztec connection that links to Rock Lake, Lake Mills, Aztalan, Cahokia, and this trade network that we know existed because we find no flint. If you want to look at where trade takes place, you look at the Aboriginal artifacts found in a concentrated area that do not contain flint. That means that artifact was not made there. And when you think about these rock terraces, which you can see, the photos, they're huge. And you think about who were they feeding with this kind of agriculture and this very sophisticated system for producing food. Who were they feeding if all was nomadic? If everything was just this nomadic landscape, or perhaps a wigwam or a teepee. Okay, so we're talking about sophistication here on a level that still, using today's technology, cannot even be accomplished or achieved.
In the most recent research that I've found from Anton Parks, if you've not come across Anton Parks yet, I highly recommend that you get his books. They're now available in English. It is a whole new spin and a whole new level on Anunnaki activity. And not just Anunnaki, but many other ancient beings that were not necessarily as benevolent as the Anunnaki.
And the Anunnaki, of course, being where the giant subject comes in. Perhaps the Anunnaki were indeed, by their own description, giants. And if you're not familiar, the Anunnaki is a group of deities who appeared in the mythological traditions of the ancient Sumerians and Babylonians. So we're talking about mythology. But as we've found in the past, exploring topics like our own space and Betelgeuse supernova, or the Mandela effect, as we found, often science fiction reflected in our modern pop culture and movies today become reality, do they not? Put a 1 in the chat room if you agree with that. That science fiction often becomes reality.
A whole new look at the Sumerian language as a prototype language to pretty much every language in the world today. And in there he suggests that whatever was happening in southern Africa, they were growing huge amounts of food that were from there, they were feeding all the other groups of beings around the world from one central food growing area. And I'm suspecting that this is maybe where, this is why there are so many agricultural terraces, because they were feeding the beings, whether they were Anunnaki or other beings from around the world, from southern Africa. And these terraces cover entire mountains. Once you start walking around, people that have been on my Stone Circle research journeys with me now, we've just had the second one, you realize the extent of this. It literally makes your jaw just drop down with wonder and amazement how vast this is. The flagship among all these ruins in southern Africa, unquestionably, is become known as Adam's Calendar.
Okay, so now is where the rabbit hole really gets exciting too, because now we're talking about the parallel with calendar stones and Adam's calendar. And we have to look at the solar and celestial calendars on the ground around Rock Lake and Lake Mills and Cahokia to look for the evidence that this society existed, and it's been proven. Okay, keep in mind, these are state parks, people. Somebody has preserved these for their significance and not allowed anybody to explore them for reasons, okay? And when you talk calendar stones, and you talk about some of the things, thank you, by the way, for your ones in chat room, Dark Wolf's Den, Fayette, Clemson, Bleed the Same. My Life, HC, welcome back. So, you started me on this whole 5G rabbit hole, and mind blown. But you get it, Moneybags, one as well. These calendar stones are what we say is what happens to prove that this, in fact, were areas of Aboriginal resource and interest. Okay? So the parallels tied behind what Michael is talking about in the lost civilizations of Africa versus exactly what we spoke about last night on Hidden in Rock Lake and all of its connections through previous episodes like the Horned Giants. And some of you in chat have preempted tonight's topic. We're going there, okay? We're going to the giants.
This site was rediscovered by Johann Heine in 2003, 2004. It is now, as far as I know, the oldest example, or an example of the oldest working sun calendar. It still works. As you can see, the shadow of the rock closest to us casts a shadow on the calendar stone, and it moves from the left to the right, from the summer solstice to the winter solstice, and when it reaches the right edge of that calendar stone, it comes back. So you can still tell every day of the year based on the setting of that sun and the shadow, where the shadow lands. Credo Mutwa's famous Zulu shaman started to weep when I showed him the book, Adam's Calendar, in 2008. He said he never thought he'd see that special place again because he was initiated there in 1937. He then proceeded to tell me what a sacred and important place it was in all of human history. And he said it was known as Inzalo Yilanga, or birthplace of the sun in Zulu shamanic tradition, where humanity was created by the gods to be the slaves in the gold mines. So this is information that's well recorded, knowledge handed down for thousands of years among Africans.
So going back to what I asked you earlier, okay, in the own lore and legend, and I'm going to play this little portion again here.
Where humanity was created by the gods to be the slaves in the gold mines.
The slaves in the gold mines. And as you listened last night to Michigan's copper question and Europe's copper question of equal proportion, that's where tonight's first question came up. Were these people doing this willingly? And if you visit Cahokia in Monk's Mound, just outside of St. Louis, and you explore this remarkable pyramid, Monk's Mound, just down the road from Monk's Mound is what we call the wooden Stonehenge of North America. And it's a celestial calendar marker, a palisaded clock, if you will, that marks the solstice, the equinox. But now let's put that back into that Costco, depending on the Mandela effect that you're under. Costco of the Aboriginal population. Well, if you're going to feed an empire, you have to know, when do you plant the seeds? When do you harvest the corn? And these types of solar calendar stones and the solar and the astronomical significance to these locations is what's important here to understanding that food storage growth for the world.
As always, completely ignored by mainstream academia and historians. This is the aerial photograph of Adam's calendar, or Inzalo Yelanga, right on the edge of the cliff there. It dropped.
Welcome, Earth's Daughter. Glad to have you here as well. I'm going to try to catch up on your chat, all of your chats here in just a few moments.
Drops down about 300 meters there and then goes into the Barberton Valley, which is an entire kilometer below this mountaintop. There's a 3D reconstruction of Adam's calendar where we have a Horus stone. We have 3 stones, the Orion stones that line up with the rise of Orion. North is on the left, south is on the right. And here we have another stone over here that was removed in 1992 and put somewhere else with a plaque on it to commemorate the opening of the Blue Swallow Nature Reserve. Now, if you go from the southern stone on the right between the 2 calendar stones, as you can see there, those are the calendar stones. Oh, I think I have a pointer here, actually. Yes, to use technology there. That's the south-north line. That is south. That is north, and it goes right between the 2 calendar stones. If you can.
Now, if you're just joining us, I will point out that if you look at the link in tonight's show notes, you'll see imagery that goes along with Michael's performance or discussion tonight. So you can actually see what he's speaking about regarding these calendar stones, which are absolutely remarkable. Welcome, Earth Daughter. Again, Costco, huge Mandela effect for me. I'm glad the guy that brought it up in a live call, I believe, with 2 or 3 shows ago. So again, these are the types of things that when they're connected, that's what really is bizarre. Now, Granoff saying the Anunnaki were fallen angels, I think. And of course, we've seen both sides of that conversation. And again, who knows who or what, but aren't we starting to see signs in everyday science regarding this Betelgeuse issue, these black holes, Mission Osiris? I mean, come on. We are extraterrestrials that have landed on Mars in some capacity, whether we're physically being there, yet or not, remains to be seen. In the next decade, a man will set foot on Mars. It's inevitable. And then we will be the extraterrestrials that, quote unquote, invaded that planet. Right? And as we talk about Mission Osiris, Rex, and bringing these samples back to Earth, we're also speaking of, the precursors of life on this planet, which could very well make us the extraterrestrials here as well. These rabbit holes are deep.
And then we get to the strange and mysterious tools, stone tools and artifacts that I started collecting. For some reason, when I first arrived here in this place from Johannesburg 11 years ago now, I don't know why I was attracted to certain things, because they didn't make any sense geologically or archaeologically, but I started collecting these weird stones, and thank God for that, because right now those are turning out to be the most valuable and crucial pieces of evidence for this vanished civilization and what was going on there. You can see how happy I was when I picked up that one. And then we have what I call these the bird-shaped stones. Here's another bird-shaped stone. It looks like it was carved, and then the patina has grown over it. And then the weird cone-shaped tools that I started collecting. Just strange cone-shaped tools everywhere, scattered across the mountains. Not to forget the donut stones or the Taurus stones. And there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of these donut Taurus-shaped stones scattered throughout southern Africa. And that brings us to the stones that ring like bells, these weird elongated stones that look like French loaves, that when you tap them, they ring so spectacularly, so beautifully, you would not believe it's a stone, it's a bell. The one at the top here, for example, that clearly looks like it was carved or shaped by somebody. That doesn't look like a normal stone, and neither does the one at the bottom. And they both ring at the same frequency. That is the key thing here. When you ring them, and they ring like bells. In fact, that one at the top was the very first tool that I've ever collected. But nothing could have prepared me for the discovery of January 2018, when my first Stone Circle research team accidentally discovered the mud fossils of giants and other creatures.
Now that's the rabbit hole connection I couldn't wait to share with you. Giants, of course. That's exactly a theory that's plausible in the discussion of where do these things come from and how are these things made and why can't our modern technology duplicate it yet still today. Incredible what we're about to get into now in the discussion of mud fossils. This is exciting stuff. Put a 1 in the chat room if you've ever heard of a mud fossil in this regard. Being able to uncover what we're about to uncover in part 2 are the things that rabbit holes are made of. Wild. Crazy, as Biswoofer says. Again, when you put these things into their perspective, when you shelf them in their proper archive, and then you can recall them, and they haven't changed, then perhaps we're doing our service a justice here. Right? I sure hope so. Oh, unbelievable. Giants did indeed exist, folks. We're going to get into that in the second part of the program. So please stick around. Don't touch that dial. You're listening to AJ and the Rippin' Rabbit Hole on Rippin' Common Sense Radio. We're at the bottom of the segment. We have to take a quick break. We're going to be back with part 2 in just a moment. If you haven't done so already, we strongly encourage you to get on our mailing list. It's very easy to do. Visit us over at rippinrabbithole.com. Put your email where it says get the weekly live schedule straight to your inbox and hit sign up. If you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button and ring that bell for the Art Bell Archive live show. You'll get notifications every time we go live, whether our tongues are working or not. Tomorrow night, Sunday, January 26th, 2020, here at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Join us as we explore down the rabbit hole of lucid dreaming. It's going to be an extremely relaxing episode and Sunday evening together with us tomorrow night. That's Sunday, January 26th. Then, remember, the first weekend of every month is Mandela Monthly, Sunday, February 2nd, 2020, starting at 7 p.m., 10/9 Central, as all shows do here. A really big shoe, because that is a big shoe. That's with special guest Cynthia Sue Larson, best-selling author and Mandela Effect researcher, will be here with Moneybag 73 for our monthly installment of Mandela Monthly. Make sure you pay attention, put that on your calendar, and join us. We're going to do open calls that night on the wild card line, give you a chance to tune in and ask your questions live on air with Cynthia Sue Larson, Moneybags 73, and myself right here on the Rip and Rabbit Hole. Now, another feature over there at the website, which is I'm really enjoying, is the Backstage 24/7 Lounge, which is a chat room which we go to after the broadcast ends because the conversations continue. And the chat is also an extension of Rippin' Rabbit Holes, and you'll see a new menu item there called Rabbit Holes. This is a collection of groups that you can participate in. You can share links, you can read information and posts, and a new group appeared 9 hours ago, the Mandela Effect Conference. Now, this is a discussion group about the Mandela Effect Conference across the world. We're going to tell you more about that in exciting news coming up in the second half. Don't go anywhere. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back on Rippin' Common Sense Radio. Now, sometimes I can really keep a secret. And I've been teasing about this exciting announcement that I can't wait to make. And as you just heard in the break there, yes, the Mandela Effect Conference, the IMEC, the International Mandela Effect Conference team is working with our team to prepare some incredibly exciting things for you. I'm so excited. I've been in talks with Dark Wolf's Den as well as Moneybags 73, and some of the things that are being prepared as the weeks and months go on are super exciting. So put a 1 in the chat room if you're excited to hear that the International Mandela Effect Conference team is working with the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. Isn't that exciting? Expect a lot of dynamic content coming up, and that is our exciting announcement. More to come as this begins to take form on how exactly we're working. So stay tuned for additional news, updates, and information regarding the International Mandela Effect Conference team. Now, you know, I knew there were conferences and I knew there were conventions for just about everything, but I didn't know until I met Moneybags that there was such thing as a Mandela Effect Conference, or convention for that matter. I am truly excited to learn of this and truly excited to meet and welcome and take top hats off to the great and fantastic people that are a part of that team. I'm really excited about this. I've been to a car wash convention once, and I'm so disappointed in myself because when I made that announcement...
And it was
Oh, hold
like
on, Michael.
cognitive dissonance
Michael,
have
Michael,
just-
hold on. Just wait. We're going to get back to Michael Tellinger and ancient engineers in just a moment. Thank you for your ones, by the way. I wanted this when I did that announcement because I've been teasing it. And I know Bleed the Same really likes when I teased. But here it is, I think. Oh, shit. It was the wrong one. It should have been this one. The International Mandela Effect Conference. Hold on. Let me do one more time. The International Mandela Effect Conference. We're going to have a lot of fun with this one, so stay tuned. And if you're not already on the mailing list at both of those sites, in tonight's show notes, I'm going to be adding a link to the Mandela Effect Conference. And as well, I told you, Jerry has created a Mandela Effect Conference group there in the Rip and Rabbit Holes as well. So expect news, updates, information. I know that a location has not been sent yet, but the dates are there. This is happening in June. And this conference is going to explode. I can tell you in the next 3 to 5 years, this is going to be a universal way of sharing information about these magnificent topics. So again, please, if you haven't done so already, make sure that you subscribe over there at the Mandela Effect Conference YouTube channel. That will be in the show notes, as well as when we repost this broadcast over at the Rip and Rabbit Hole. All of our Mandela Effects, including our Mandela Effect Monthly with Moneybags, are going to be tagged and sponsored by the International Mandela Effect Conference. So I'm really excited about this announcement, and we even hit it right on point, right on cue. That's live shows here at the Rip and Rabbit Hole for you. Now, I can tell you, I spent all day in a car on my way to California and back. So my tongue has been tied all day, but I could not stop thinking about a Mandela Effect Conference while I'm thinking about mud fossils that Michael Tellinger describes finding a heart and claims that these mud fossils are everywhere and could perhaps shed light on these ancient civilizations that built these fantastic megalithic structures long before we give the world credit for doing so. And I want to go back in the chat and find a My Life HC33 comment because it caught my attention and now I don't know where it is. You guys chat so fast. I can't always. I want to know, what age did these people live to? Okay, so biblically, we've been told that perhaps people listed their lives as high as 350 years in some cases. I was taught in history not long, but I'm seeing more and more proof they lived way longer than us, like hundreds of years. I agree with that. I absolutely do. And Grenoff and I were talking about, the Devil's Canyon, or the, what's it called? Help me out. It was the scene of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and how this is an ancient tree stump of what was known here on Earth as world trees that breached the clouds. Okay, so when you think about these types of megalithic structures that the ancient engineers designed and built, that we have proof of, okay, it's there. It's all over. And as Michael Tellinger suggests, could possibly be a rock right outside your front door, which remarkable. Now we can really start to look at these things. And in tonight's show notes, if you right click and open that, you'll see the imagery that associates with tonight's topic.
And it was like cognitive dissonance have just suddenly vanished. So once I was blind, now I could see. It's incredible. And we were walking up the mountain with this team. This was in January. And this stone here, that stone there was lying right beneath my feet. So I picked it up, and once again, I just shook my head, and I went, why are these stones these weird shapes? What's going on with all these weird shapes, man?
There's even a Bible verse that says that there will come a time when even the rocks will cry out.
And I put the stone down on the wall, one of the walls, and I walked up the mountain, and I said, by the time I come down, I'm going to figure out what this is. And I did. As I was coming down, I suddenly started remembering all the stuff I was seeing in my research into mud fossils. And when I looked at that stone again, I picked it up, I went, oh my goodness, this is a rib. And everything changed. And there you can see a collection of many of the fossils. Here we have a shoulder blade. We got one rib here. There's another beautiful elongated rib.
Again, if you visit tonight's show notes listed in the video below in the link, right-click, open it in a new window so you can keep the broadcast here, you're going to see a collection of these quote-unquote mud fossils that Michael claims are body parts.
And they're just all kinds of body parts that completely and utterly metamorphosize. Now, here is one of the best examples. There's a heart. You can clearly see the aorta, where the aorta goes at the top. You see the coronary artery crossing the heart. This is about 3 times the size of a human heart.
3 times the size of a human heart. Put a 1 in the chat room if you've seen tonight's show notes and you see this heart. It's remarkable. It is unbelievable. Effing believable. I can't say what I want to say. But it is remarkable when you look at the detail of a stone that is 3 times the size of a normal heart. What is going on?
So this could possibly fit the shape of an Anunnaki. If the Anunnaki were 3 times the size or twice the size of humans, that could be an Anunnaki heart. Completely fossilized, metamorphosized into Hornfels rock. This is a huge problem for geology and metallurgy and chemistry. It seems that when these body parts get trapped in mud and water, they completely and utterly transmutate and transform from whatever organ it was or body part with the internal structure. It completely metamorphosizes into very dense crystalline rock called hornfels in geological terms. When these fossils break and you look at the internal structure, you can't see internal structure. This is the mystery. Only when you look carefully, you start seeing some indications of weird things going on. And you'll see what I mean in a second. But just to the untrained eye, when any of these fossils break, it just looks like black rock known as hornfels or ringstone.
Now, put a 1 in the chat room. If you have a home where you have a collection of rocks, and I'm not talking about, decorative rocks brought in by Moon Landscaping or, something like that. I'm saying like natural rocks, like you have a walking trail close to your house, or you have, put a 1 in the chat room if you have access to natural rocks anywhere. It doesn't matter where you are. It could be anywhere in the world. And by the way, we are an international audience. I looked at the stats after speaking with Dark West 10. We have been listened to in the last 28 days in 14 countries internationally. So I love that we're raising these topics. It's so exciting. Okay, great. Earth Daughter, My Life. Go for a walk. Shut your cell phone off. Bleed the same. Dark Wolf's Den. Leave it at home, Moneybags. Don't record yourself. Don't bring a camera. Bring a rock home with you. Go for a walk. Commit to 60 minutes. Go out and explore your own area with this mindset. Be open to this thought that perhaps these types of structures. Now, if you see something that's so big that you cannot bring it home with you, go back home, get your camera, come back and take a picture and share it with us. But I really want to know from you guys. I'm going to do this. I've committed Tuesday morning from 10 to 11 a.m. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to walk within a 1 mile radius of my home. I'm not bringing a cell phone. I'm going to explore with this mindset in mind. And keep in mind that I'm here in the West Coast. So even if you're listening in Ripon, Wisconsin tonight, I encourage you to do the same. I know it's snow-capped. I know it's covered. Bundle up. Get yourself prepared. Go out and explore and bring back and study what you found.
We have teeth, hearts, ribs, and I'm picking up more and more hearts, different shapes and sizes of hearts. In fact, some of them look like they still have organic material in it. By the way, we have identified a few of these fossils and taken them away to the lab to extract DNA. Yes, you can extract DNA from mud fossils. That is not something new. It has been done before. So I wait with great anticipation for us to extract DNA from some of these fossils, because that's going to be a whole nother step. And one of the things that happened, I was holding that heart in my hand like I was here.
Okay, before he goes to that story, Earth, I love the fact that you found a primitive rock ashtray, and that's your ashtray from one smoker to another. I appreciate that, and that's the spirit that I'm speaking about. Even if it's an ashtray that you stumble upon on this journey. And I'm going to quiz you guys next week about this very subject, and I'm going to find out who did this and who didn't. And I really want to know what you find, because I'm super excited to do this. I cannot wait until Tuesday morning. And again, Michael is suggesting that these are everywhere. And as ginormous as they may appear, they could be the entranceway to your gated community if you're fortunate enough to live in one. They could be, a feature that water has been run over, or they could be a tiny little stone that you kick up on your path. I mean, this is exciting to think that they're everywhere, all around the world, in 14 countries. Yahoo! Moneybags.
In this picture, literally, it was taken on the same day. I was standing with his heart in my hand, and this couple pulled up, a guy and his wife, and he ran up and he said, "Hey, Michael, how's it going? I've been watching your videos." And he looked at me and said, "Is that a heart you're holding?" And I go, "Yeah, well, I think it's a heart." He goes, "Well, it is a heart. I'm a surgeon. That's a bloody heart." And I go, "Wow, you're a surgeon?" "Yeah, I'm a surgeon at the Johannesburg Gen." So I said, "Wow, would you mind just going on video and telling me a bit about some of these body parts?" So I've got about a 5-minute video or more, like a 10-minute video clip of him going around telling me what these different body parts are. So it was a really beautifully timed moment. And since then, there have been many doctors and physicians and people that understand human anatomy, and their jaws literally fall to the ground when they see what fills the museum.
That's truly amazing that an actual doctor had the opportunity to look at this stone and say, well, you've got a heart there. What if you bring back home a heart? I hope you do. I hope I do.
That is where the shoulder blade was lying. I've been driving past this for 10 years. 10 years. Didn't see it. That's that expression. Once I was blind, but now I can see.
Thanks, Earth Daughter, for that suggestion. I'm going to check out New Earth. And also, if you're active over at the Rabbit Holes, if you want to post that in the Rabbit Hole group for show ideas. I use this area as a working notebook for future topics. So just putting that out there.
Everything changes. Here's a bone knuckle, a large bone knuckle, the shaft going to the left. And you can see when my feet next to it, the size of that. How many rocks like this lying up on top of the mountain, and you just think they're rocks. Well, you'd be wrong. All of them are pretty much fossils. We noticed this strange thing in there, this weird, like a, whatever that is, whatever you call it, a pattern in there. And we photographed it and we started playing with it, the exposure. We realized it's a tail. You see it. It's a lizard or a crocodile tail with a hind leg, one hind leg there, another hind leg down here. When you look at the other, there's another view of it. There's a crocodile or lizard leg, tail going back there.
Reptilian.
This entire thing is one giant rock.
A giant rock.
So, the mud fossils of giants and weird creatures have suddenly taken the spotlight off the stone circles and the vanished civilizations because
Yes, they have.
they seem to be everywhere.
They are
And we now
everywhere.
have to put this into context of what we're dealing with here.
Let's put it into context. What are we dealing with here? And I need your help. Please commit in in the next week. And when we meet again next week, I'm going to quiz you to see who did this. Please commit to me. Put a 1 in the chat room if you commit to exploring your local area for these mud fossils, stones, rocks, things that could be hiding right there under your own feet. Now that is exciting to think what could be found. I have no idea. But perhaps one of you might find a heart or a rib. Thank you, my life. Thank you, Dark Buff. Thank you, Earth Daughter. Thank you for trying. That's all I ask. I just want to know. I'm going to do it with you. We're doing this together because something is going to tie this entire conversation together within the next year. Mark my words. AJ said it at 8:07 p.m. Pacific, Saturday, January 25th, on the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. Something is going to tie all of this together. Something is coming forward in the coming days, weeks, months, maybe even years, that's going to shed new light on all of these topics. And that's why we're here. We're documenting, even though we know that document can change. Far out. Wow. If Art Bell were alive today, he would have a field day with these topics, as do I. I really do. Thank you, Granoff, for your suggestions. And as I pointed out, Earthwolf, over there, we have our Earth Daughter. Now there's a Mandela effect taking place right there. Earthwolf. Earth Daughter. We have that place for suggestions. And I strongly encourage you to join us over there at the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. It's a lot of fun. And thanks to my life for getting our 5G, Stop 5G campaign off the ground. Thank you. All because of that backstage Rippin' Rabbit Hole area. Thankful. We did it. We spent another Saturday night evening together. Give yourselves a round of applause for being smart enough to be here. Wasn't it interesting? And the topic is just beginning. We're going to carry on this much further, doing much more follow-up stories in the future regarding this amazing subject of megalithic structures, Anunnaki, mud fossils. The rabbit hole goes deep. It really does. Again, join us tomorrow night for Lucid Dreaming. It's going to be a completely relaxing evening as we explore the world of dreamland together, no pun intended. An exciting, super exciting announcement tonight made, if you weren't here. Our relationship with the International Mandela Effect Conference team. We're going to be bringing lots of news and updates and information your way as we get closer to an exciting conference this year. No doubt about it. And like I told you before, Cynthia Sue Larson, also a member of the International Mandela Effect Conference team, will be here with Moneybags and I on February 2nd, 2020, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Join us definitely for that Mandela Monthly. So, wherever you are, wherever you may be, whatever the case may be, good morning, good evening, or good night. I'm AJ, the Rippin' Rabbit, and until we meet again, take care of yourself and each other. Good night. I'll see you backstage, rippinrabbithole.com.
Once there was an old man living in an old house down by the lake. Rumor says the man was hunting for rabbits just for fun. Since the day the rabbits disappeared for a while, then came back and cast a spell over the old man. So he looks like a rabbit too now.
Wow, Groundhog's Day? I'm coming back on air for that. That's wild. That is really wild.
They slit your throat and throw you in the gutter. But it's all you can expect from men like that. The bus is bound for Niles Bend Harbor. The ladies wear perfume to scar your nose. And the only way to reach them is to scare them. But of that you know little, I suppose. It's a magical and mystical performance as you perambulate right down the road with your pockets full of stardust and perfection, and Jesus on your side and in your soul. She had rings on every finger and 10 bracelets, some touch with powers given by a sage. He had contemplated giving her his wristwatch. The time for him had long since gone its way. Of the city, he would shuffle while spinning on his heels and chewing beef. He had promised her he'd be a vegetarian, but he could not control his lust for meat. Some say she left the streets for greater glory, but others said that she was big with child. Whatever was the truth, it did not matter. He traded 2 gold teeth for a sack of corn, and he would plant it on the outskirts of the city as a warning that he would someday return. He said he never found her and he's still looking. It is said he searches rivers for some sign, but the truth is that he caught her down in Georgetown with a Spaniard who had left his wife behind.
You're listening to Ripon Common Sense Radio.
That's right, where we take you well into the midnight hour with our special Art Bell Archives show happening tonight and every night this weekend, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Tune in as we open up the Art Bell Archives and dive into the lost classics of a vocal treasure. We take a look at those stories and we bring them up to date and we share them with you. We ask for your input and your shout outs, your call-ins as we go through the most amazing stories ever told. Tune in tonight and every night as we reinvestigate the Art Bell Archives live.
The Art Bell Archive Show. 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, RiponCommonSense.com.
Just want to say thank you to Ripon Common Sense. It's a really nice area for news to read. There's a little something for everybody. I just enjoy it. I've been doing it for a couple weeks now, and it's really nice. Thank you.
soon.